Alright, Jamer here with a review of Assault Suits Valken being played here on the Super Nintendo, though it was really released for the Super Famicom, because this game is known in the West as Cybernator. This is a personal favorite of mine, and one that I have already reviewed on our blog, so I will link to that in the description. But I wanted to make this video review to highlight how influential this game is, since you can find a couple of very recent games on Steam that appear to play similarly, and to highlight some of the features that the Japanese version has that the Western release doesn't have, which, by the way, the Super Nintendo is fairly easy to modify so they will play Super Famicom games. You just need a cutting tool to remove two plastic bars at the base of the slot that would otherwise prevent Super Famicom games from fitting into the connectors. So what's the story with this game? I can't say how much has changed with the translation, but in Cybernator, the world is at war over the last remaining fossil fuels as well as outer space, and it has that kind of absurd dichotomy that you find in giant robot anime, where there's this somber tone of, oh, war is bad, but then giant robots make it seem like a whole lot of fun. But in any case, you pilot a giant green mech, or Valken, that looks a bit like a Zaku, through several stages with various 2D platforming schemes. The most common is a run and jump setting with gravity, but since you are controlling a giant mech, well, it's a bit of a lumbering machine. If you hit the ground too hard, it takes a bit of time for the mech to recover, and jumping is aided by a limited jump jet. Also, you can use a dash ability to move quickly, as well as hold your direction and strafe and move backwards, which is a bit of an advanced move. And you can fire in a whopping 16 directions, which is pretty impressive for a game with a 4-directional D-pad. Moreover, you have a shield that you can use on the ground and multiple weapons to switch to and upgrade with power-ups collected on the battlefield. Aiming is a feature that really adds a lot of precision and control to the game, but there is a learning curve to aiming effectively. The more you press a directional button, the more the mech will aim its rifle in that direction. So for instance, if you are aiming down and to the right, and then you press up, it won't snap immediately up, but will instead move at a pretty reasonable pace through right, up and to the right, etc. until it reaches up. If you like a particular angle though, pressing L will snap the angle and the mech's direction, leaving you free to focus more on the mech's movement. If it sounds complicated, well, it is, but I've found that mastering controls really adds a lot of depth to the options, so I can approach a stage differently and pull off some fun moves in the process. So far I've only mentioned the gravity 2D stages. There are also 0G areas where, in flight, pushing a direction will cause the mech to float in that direction and continue that way when the button is released, and it's here where snapping the rifle's angle can be particularly useful. There are also some brief areas where it plays like a horizontally scrolling shooter, areas where the dash is left on, and areas where the mech is flying and moves like the 0G stages, only when you stop pressing a direction, the mech will stay in that spot. Now, they really packed a lot of features and gameplay into this game, and two of the weapons, the default rifle and the laser cannon, are just a ton of fun to use. Cybernator does a couple more things to differentiate itself from your typical game through character interaction and mission-focused objectives. So, for character interaction, there's a radio chatter throughout the game explaining your objectives and voicing characters' opinions, though unfortunately for the Western release, the character images were removed. Also very anime-like is the fact that your character argues with his rival over the radio, which is ridiculous. Why would they do that? And there is a budding relationship between the main character and the cute radio operator. As for mission objectives, your goal is generally not to destroy a big boss at the end, though sometimes it is. Rather, you will often need to fend off a tough enemy as you destroy a mission target, and this can lead to some rather tense moments. You can fail some of these objectives if you don't work quickly enough, and should you beat the game after failing, the ending will become the quote-unquote bad ending rather than the good one. So I have a lot of respect for the developers, since they were able to adapt the SNES controller to let the player have precise aiming and the feeling of controlling a giant, heavy mech. They packed the game with interesting scenarios and gameplay, The sprites and giant Mode 7 explosions look pretty good. The anime story plays out well, and the music is catchy. You can see the game's influence in very recent games such as Gigantic Army and Armored Hunter Gunhound EX, so perhaps I'll review those games at a later point. So I highly recommend picking up either Cybernator for the SNES or the Wii Virtual Console, or Suits Valken for the Super Famicom, and again the SNES can be modified fairly easily to accommodate Super Famicom games. Well, have a good one.